Hey folks, happy Wednesday everybody. So here we are again, jump the hump. You are halfway through the week. Keep your focus everybody. Keep going, you'll be okay, you'll get there. It'll be Friday very, very soon. So as you know, jump the hump is a new thing that we've put in place. It's just a snapshot really of where you need to be in your business, getting your practice going, getting your problems sorted out. So we are taking ideas and contributions from members as regards what is the most difficult areas within practice. And I think this week the poll has showed that actually non-performing staff members are right up there really, causing practice managers, principal dentists, a great deal of stress and angst. So you'll know the story, won't you? You will have interviewed somebody. They started with you maybe 18 months ago, 2 years ago, and then for whatever reason they've slowly gone down in their productivity, in their attitude, the whole thing, and it has a massive impact on your business. I'm just going to refer to the business as being that, your business, because the reality is you're no different to any other business, okay? And it's really important that dentistry understands that all business across the whole of the business world suffer the same issues. So don't feel bad about that. That's just part of being in business. That's part of running an organization. But I do know it can be incredibly stressful. And if I were to take you back in time to when I owned a small business with 6 members of staff, goodness me, sometimes, just sometimes, it seemed like we've got 60 members of staff, maybe 600 members of staff, because that non-performing employee can have a massive impact on your business. So what did I do back in those days? Well, if I'm really honest with you, and again, this is about making you feel better about yourself as a manager. So I was owning a business. I was the managing director. I owned the business. I didn't understand anything about HR, very, very little. I just thought that if you are nice to people, they'll be nice back. Doesn't work that way, does it? Unfortunately, we all know that's a very, very naive view to take. But that was my view before I got involved in the world of HR and started to understand things with a little bit more depth. So this thing around trying to change your culture and trying to drive your business forward, you have little parachutes that pop out and pull your business back and slow you down from moving forward. And clearly some of those parachutes can be underperforming employees. So today I've got some questions for you that you can pose inside your own head when you're thinking about those underperforming employees. And also think about why is it that you're not maybe moving forward with that. So it might take you outside your comfort zone a little bit, so forgive me. But you know what? I wish I could time travel, because if I could time travel, I could go back to my former self in business, and we're talking now maybe about 18 years ago. And I'd love to sit down with me and say to my former self, so you do have issues inside the business? And I would have said, yes, I do, absolutely. Yeah, I've got 1 or 2 staff members that are just not pulling their weight. And then I'd say, so what are you doing about it? Why are you sitting on your hands and not taking action? And if I was really honest with you, my former self would have said to you, or would have been the answer to my present self, would have been, do you know what, Andy? I don't like confrontation. It frightens me a little bit from the point of view of what could be the outcome. I know that tribunals exist. I know that we're in a claims culture. So sometimes it's just easier to let it go under the table rather than meet it head on and deal with it. However, as a leader, whether you are a leader in business, a leader in the forces, a leader of a team, whatever it is, sports team, whatever it is, your job as that leader is to ensure that everybody's engaged. So sadly, it's one of the jobs that we have as leaders, managers, directors, principal dentists. If we want to shake off some of the difficulties around business, then we've got to take on some of the more difficult things around the communication with staff members that are non-performing or underperforming. So 4 questions for you, okay? But just before I give you the 4 questions, I kind of want to tee this up. You're going to need to make sure that you actively start recognizing what's going on inside the business. Actively watch out for what sort of behaviors or lack of production your individuals are suffering with. And then take it right the way back down to grassroots. And I want you to think about, if you were the person that hired that individual, why did you hire them in the first place? And what sort of conversations did you have with that individual? So you can kind of set the bedrock there as to say, well, is this person a good person initially? Was I involved in the hiring of that individual? And if you were, then that does kind of make it more simple. If you weren't, and maybe that team member has been in situ for 10, 15 years, and you've only been the practice manager for 3 years, there's always that feeling that maybe the balance of power is a little bit skewed against you as a manager. But you've got to try and take that outside of your head, because the reality is you've been given the post of manager inside that business for a reason, because the dentists, the partners in the business, they want to move the business forward, and they've recognized your ability to lead. So that's the first point, okay, that you just need to think around from the perspective of before you take this problem on. The second point that you need to think about is, so if you then think to yourself, okay, I know that I've got this individual who's not performing, they're not doing what it is that they need to do, and they're doing it, and they're not doing it fairly regularly. The first thing then to say is, right, what is going to be my process now to draw them into a discussion, and how am I going to see it through? Because the worst thing in the world is if you start a conversation with Susie, who is your non-performing employee, or Billy, or Peter, or Paul, or whoever it is, you start that conversation and then you don't see it through, that is going to completely undermine your process for, in effect, performance managing that individual. So like starting anything, whether it's a fitness regime or whatever, when you start it, you've got to think, right, I'm going to see this through and I'm going to get a result from this. Otherwise, it's not going to be worth doing. It's just going to cause you some stress, because at the starting point, it possibly will cause you some stress. So pick out in your mind what is going to be your process, how are you going to manage it, and what's going to be, and are you committed as a manager to seeing that right the way through to the end, to make sure that behavior is turned around, and that you do then subsequently condition that new way of thinking into that employee. So, okay, so some four questions for you. The first question is really basic. Does the employee actually understand what it is that you want them to do? Now, I'm watching all sorts of stuff at the moment. I love documentaries. Fly on the wall documentaries are great, particularly about business. And very often you can see the dysfunction inside a business just by watching a documentary like that with a cup of tea. And you'll pick out a manager who's not communicating in the right way to the team. Therefore, there's a load of angst around what the production level is that the manager is getting out of the team. But the team actually doesn't, they're not acting as a unit, they're not connected, they're not communicating between themselves. So straight away, we've got to ask ourselves, do they actually know? It's a really basic question, but does the team member know explicitly what is the requirement? So have you sat that team member down and said, look, what I need from you is every day I need you to do this, 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 and this. And this is the standard that I need that to go to. And if you've got a problem in any way, communicate that back to me, and I will be able to support you. That leads me on to question number 2. Question number 2 is just that. Is there a problem that's stopping them from achieving? So again, if you were to pull somebody to one side and say, look, I need to have a little bit of a chat with you about things in general, and I will be honest with you and upfront with you right at the start of this conversation, I am a little bit puzzled. That's always a good phraseology. I'm a little bit puzzled and a little bit concerned that you don't seem to be achieving what it is that we've discussed around the actions that you're supposed to be doing. So I need to delve a little bit deeper around that. And one of the questions I want to ask you is, first off the bat, is there anything that's stopping you achieving that task? And why are you not getting it done within the timescale that's allocated to you? Now, the reason that I say that is, again, going back to when I was in business, I had a staff member who I used to get them to print out sales brochures. And he was inevitably, he never got it done on the same day. But what he didn't tell me was, he didn't tell me he got a problem with the printer. The printer kept chewing up paper, so he was spending an hour trying to pull the paper out the printer. So all that happened was, because he wasn't communicating that to me, at the end of the day, when I was expecting to see a stack of 50 brochures, sales brochures, I wasn't getting them. So therefore, I automatically thought that he was the problem. Actually, had I have asked the question, is there something stopping you? How in my management capacity can I support you in your role? He would have said, well, the printer's a load of rubbish, Andy, so can we get it fixed? And I would have said, yeah. So, there's often things around that. So any forces that are outside of their control, that could be also colleagues that are not pulling and supporting the individual. There's a whole host of things. So ask that question, is there something that's stopping you from achieving? Because we need you to achieve, don't we? Question number 3 is, do they know actually that they are underperforming? So you could ask the question, couldn't you? You could say to that individual, look, I am talking to you about your performance, but kind of before we kick off with this, I've asked you already if there's anything that's stopping you, that that's maybe slowing you up in your duties or your completion of your duties. The next question I've got for you really is, how do you feel about your production level? How do you feel about what it is that you're doing on a day-to-day basis? Now, they may say to you, yeah, they might get defensive at that moment in time and say, well, yeah, I think I'm doing a great job. And then you can work with that, can't you? You can say, well, that's interesting that you think that, because the reality is the standard is here and you're actually reaching there all the time. You're not getting tasks done. So can you understand my concern here? So you're kind of trying to shift around the discussion to get them to try and think about your position, because you can actually say in an open manner, look, my position as manager in the practice is often a difficult one, in that I have to have difficult conversations with people sometimes, and we talk about issues around productivity, around performance, and it's not easy for me to do that. So obviously what I want to do is understand totally where you're at. Okay, so you're finding out, you're constantly fact finding all the time. So by asking them, do they know if they're underperforming, you're going to get an inclination there as to whether it's a can't do the actual task or whether it's a won't do. Because a won't do is not on, and a can't do, you can kind of deal with that, can't you? Because you can train people and you can develop people. But if it's an attitude problem and it's a won't do, now we've got something that we need to deal with quite robustly. And then the last thing that you need to ask in that scenario is, am I contributing to the problem? Harvard Business School, they did a study in the early noughties that looked at interaction between management and also teams. And they found that something along the lines of 76% of team members that were non-performing, that were poor performing, 76% of them were non-performing or poor performing because of lack of leadership from the manager. So we do have to look internally as well, and to see if we're actually coming up with the goods as a leader. Are we holding meetings? Are we communicating to the staff in the right way? Are we praising staff as well? Are we letting them know that they're doing a great job? From time to time, just reaching out to somebody and saying, Sandra, well done yesterday. I saw you deal with that difficult patient. I tell you what, absolutely mind-blowing. Really, really great. Thank you for that support. Thanks. The practice really appreciates that. People love that. We're all human beings at the end of the day. We don't just want to be hit with a stick. We do like a bit of praise. However, if you need to take that further with an underperforming employee, then clearly that is what you need to do. Now, we can do another session on that, or if somebody wants to reach out and have a conversation with me around that, how we get deeper into that. But for today, it's a short snapshot of where you need to be. There's 4 questions. Do they understand the requirement? Is it a problem stopping them that's external? Do they actually know that they're underperforming? And are you doing all that you can do, or are you contributing to that difficulty? Hope that helps for today. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Remember, we're not far away from Friday. Keep going. See you soon.